Hello again, friends. Time for another In Other News. Actually, let's double down. There was a couple of news stories that caught my eye from either sides of the planet that are seemingly totally unrelated, but they're not. Because you know that's what I like to do. I like to make those ties and explain our current global times. And these two stories have everything to do with the power of corporations on the planet. No. I'm not going to go radical, anti-corporate, anti-rich, anti-anything like that. Okay, it might sneak in a little bit. However, there's been two different things. One happened in the United States. Another happened in India. Just in the last 48 hours, it set me to thinking. And the events I'm speaking of specifically are that in the United States, President Barack Obama signed this budgetary act into law that kept the government going, but attached to it was a page that basically protected big corporations like Monsanto from having to label their foods as GMO, and protected them and shielded them from any regulatory oversight over the production of said foods. Okay. That's one thing. Let's put it over there. That's getting the anti-GMO people all fired up, and environmental people all fired up. Yeah, crank it up. That one's actually the more boring one because that's totally predictable. The one that's way more interesting happened in India, and today in India, a company named, it's a Swiss company, a drug maker, Novartis, lost a lawsuit at the Indian Supreme Court, basically, and that lawsuit was over a patent on a drug. The drug is Gleevec. Doesn't matter to me. It's the precedent that sets it's way important. And the company, Novartis, big multinational corporate company, huge drug producer, was basically saying, hey, we own the patent on this drug because we developed it, and every 6 months or every year or every 2 years, they tweak it a little bit. Seriously, they just tweak it, the formula, so that they can therefore say, oh, this is a new patent, it's a new drug. So basically, they try to protect the entire line of that drug in perpetuity. This process is actually called evergreening. They have an evergreen patent on this particular product that they can continue to minutely manipulate, not really change it at all, but therefore keep applying for new patents. And therefore, they own and corner the market on this particular drug like most drug companies do. If they develop a product, they can then say they patent it, and therefore they own it, and they can charge as much as they want for this. It's a cancer drug. The Indian Supreme Court earlier today said no. And by the way, what does that mean? That, you know, that everybody can steal it? No, it's that other companies can produce generic versions of that drug. Because let's be honest, generic copies of drugs cost nothing. And that's important for a country like India that has a hell ton of people who ain't got nothing to pay, but may have diseases that they would like treated. See how that works? So in developing countries, or even in richer countries like ours, or China, or, you know, increasingly richer India, generic drugs are an important way to keep your healthcare floating and get medicine into the hands of people that actually need it without charging $100 a pill. The United States is the extreme of this because we do not have like public health care. We don't have socialized medicine or any of that stuff. So the United States citizens are at the mercy of drug companies that can charge anything they want to for a single pill. You can charge $100 a pill. You can charge $1 million for a pill. If you hold the patent, no one else can make it. Therefore, there's no competition. You control the price. Isn't that quaint? We say we don't like monopolies, but then we set up the patent system to basically be monopolies on products. So they say, oh, we developed this drug and no one can ever make it. Oh, but wait a minute, we have 1 million people or 1 billion people who need this drug. We don't care, pay our price, or you don't get the drug and your people die. Corporations are motivated by profit. I don't blame them. That's in their genetic makeup. But in this case, the reason that the Indian ruling on this is so important is because it sets an international precedent. And the precedent that's being portrayed in the press is, India's bad. The international press, well, all the press really, But certainly corporations are saying, oh, India's bad. They're terrible. What terrible, terrible people. They're stealing our stuff. All right, sure, whatever. But the stuff you're providing, or the stuff that's being stolen from you, is a formula for a drug that can be made for 2 pennies, and you're charging $100 for it. So at some point, social justice gets introduced to this, and I think it's fascinating that India said, no, look, we upheld your patent for a while, but now you're just recreating the patent in order to corner the market on this drug, and we want our citizens to have access to this drug, so we don't care. So the multinational corporations are up at arms about this because, again, it sets a precedent that a country like India may say, no, we're not respecting that trademark or patent law in this particular circumstance, which means we might not in other circumstances either. In other words, the Indian government saying, we're actually going to weigh out the benefits of recognizing your patent indefinitely, and we're going to weigh that against the needs of our citizens. And if we think the needs of our citizens are higher than your personal property on that, screw you, drug company, or screw you, energy company, or screw you, food company. I think it's awesome. And again, I'm not dissing multinational corporations. I'm not dissing Novartis. They're a billion-dollar company. They have tons of money. But I think it's fascinating, and here's why. Here's why I find it fascinating. Again, I'm not dissing. I find it fascinating because for the first time that I can remember for a long time, this is a sovereign state that is pulling back power to the sovereign state. What do I mean by that? We are now in an age where multinational corporations, energy companies, drug companies, grocery store companies, financial houses, banks, are now so powerful that they feel like they can write the rules that the whole world has to follow, and they get the rich companies from which most of these, they get rich countries from which most of these companies are from to support patent law and support trademark law on a worldwide basis. Have you ever noticed the U.S. government bashes China all the time? They're like, they don't respect intellectual property rights. They don't respect trademark rights. They don't respect all these other things. They pirate all these things. Yeah, that's because the United States is leading the parade on everyone should give all property rights and all intellectual property rights to all companies, most of which come from the U.S. and Western Europe. Therefore, all those companies make all the money forever on any drug that's ever produced. And here's the scary thing. Increasingly on food that's genetically modified, Monsanto can tweak corn and own corn, or own their strains of corn, and own every other food stuff that's ever produced. And for those of you that know this, companies are running around the planet trying to unlock the genetic code of every plant, animal, and everything else, and then slightly tweak it and say, we created that, we own it. We own life, we own plants, we own food, we own the drugs, and all you suckers got to pay us for every time that you grow corn, any time that you take this cancer drug, anytime you use any product that we say is ours, you got to pay us. Now, let's go to the U.S. story, because that's exactly where the United States is as the lead supporter of this parade. And at the same time that India was standing up and saying, look, companies, you don't have more power than our state. We know you have these patent and trademark laws. We know the United States and rich Western countries have your back on this. But we are weighing it against the needs of our citizens, and you lose. That hasn't happened for a while. So that's the precedent that I think is way more important. Meanwhile, back in the United States, same time, Monsanto, a huge multinational corporation that's a big food producer, and a big dabbler in genetically modified foods, snuck in the 11th hour, right before this bill was being sent to President Obama to be signed, snuck in this page of a budget bill, had nothing to do with food, of a budget bill. They snuck a page in that the company Monsanto itself wrote, openly and admitted, I'm not making fun of them, they wrote the damn page that said, oh, by the way, if anyone ever is going to force companies to label their foods as genetically modified or to oversee the testing or creation of genetically modified foods, that's fine as long as your other companies, but we're putting in a rider that says that we're exempt and all other rich companies like us are exempt. And President Obama signed it into law. And you're like, oh my God. Do you see the two differences here? And again, the bigger ideological thing that excites me about these two stories is in the United States, the U.S. law is now written by corporations. We default to them. Okay, tell us what to do and we'll do it. And for those of you that followed my office hours, I was raging last night about the financial system. In our country, multinational corporations and the financial houses pretty much tell Congress people what's going to happen. And Congress people are like, okay, all right, we'll write it. I mean, hell, these companies and financial houses usually write the legislation outright and just hand it to them and say, here, pass this and give it to the president. And everybody's like, oh, okay, well, businesses are smart and they're rich, so they know best. Oh, my gosh. The banks have the American government so hoodwinked. All banks have to do is say, if we fail, the world will end. If we fail, the whole planet will die. So therefore, you have to give us anything we want. And Congress people and the President of the United States and the head of the Treasury, they all shake. They're like, oh my gosh, okay. Anything the financial house wants, okay. Back to point, though. I don't want to get off on a rage about crappy Wall Street practices. What you're seeing here, back it up for the finish, for the big global picture here, is two different approaches. In the United States, we default now to the greater power. When it comes to the legislative process, we default to the greater power of multinational corporation and finance houses. We say, they have more power than we do. We're here to help them out, or they'll at least get to write the laws. And again, for those of you that think I'm some whack-ass crazy liberal, these entities write the laws. This is not speculation. Monsanto admitted it. They're like, yes, we wrote this rider that protected our company. And sent it to Congress people, and they were like, no, okay. So this isn't wild speculation by some radical lefty. There is greater power in corporations now than in most sovereign states in the world, and this is a situation that's been evolving for 20 or 30 years that people have all come to accept. Even here in the United States, we're like, oh yeah, oh okay. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad, but we accept it, yes. Exxon is pretty damn powerful, and they have a say in legislation that's going to get passed in this country. More say than you do as an individual, because all these companies, by the way, donate to the Republican and Democratic parties. So, you know, sometimes in other countries we call that corruption. We legalized it here. That's fine. Have all the campaign contributions you want, and therefore you'll get a say in how the laws are written. That's kind of dicey, but it certainly is showing the power of individual corporations and how that power is increased at the expense of the power of the government, at the expense of the power of the sovereign state. And to close, India's basically taking it back. And I find it fascinating. India's saying, no, yes, you're an independent corporation and you're worth millions. No, we don't care about that particular rule. That's not good for the citizens of our state. And we run this damn state, damn it. So you can't do that here. And the drug company... This is very typical. Just like the financial houses who say, oh my gosh, if you regulate us at all, the whole economic system will collapse. So leave us alone and give us what we want. And American lawmakers are like, okay. The drug companies have said, oh my gosh, no one's ever going to produce drugs ever again. Ever. They're saying, if we're going to lose money. So now there's no impetus to do any research to develop any new drugs because of what India's doing. All companies will stop doing everything because we're not going to make all the money. That is the most ludicrous, preposterous, and quite frankly, insulting attitude to take. Yeah, Novartis, you might stop making drugs. Do you think all other companies who are in competition with you are going to stop trying to produce drugs that the world needs? I don't think so. So it's ludicrous for reason one, capitalist competition. Reason two, it's ludicrous and insulting is, you know, not everyone on the planet is in it for the buck. Do you really think cancer researchers and people who have people in their family who are cancer survivors, and dedicated doctors and scientists who have gotten into this for passion. Do you think they live and die by the damn almighty buck? Are you suggesting, Novartis and all their drug companies, that because you ain't going to make $1 billion in perpetuity, that no one wants to fight cancer anymore? That is insulting. And let me finish with this. This is the exact reason we need a much more vibrant university research system in place. We have a pretty good one. This is a reason to keep it alive and do better. And for governments to do more to fund active research. I know for you ardent capitalists out there, you say, let private companies do it all. They're way better. They're way more awesome. And they'll solve all our problems. No, they won't. Novartis is case in point. They said, we're not going to make $1 billion in perpetuity. Then we're not going to do it anymore. They're basically throwing a tantrum to try to get the world to berate and belittle India into giving Novartis their way. And I hope India stands strong. I hope China stands strong. I hope Russia stands strong. I hope more sovereign states start standing up and saying, that's not good for our society. It's good for you, a business. It's not good for us overall. And we're not doing that. And again, we need to entrench research universities and government funding into research institutions, because that gives power back to sovereign states and back to governments. Putting it into research in universities that aren't motivated solely by the damn dollar. Because you know what? A lot of us do research because we're passionate about it. A lot of doctors want the solutions to the disease, not a way to make money off the disease. So this is a quite crucial turn of events in India and the United States simultaneously. Two different axes, two different poles of the same axes, I should say, of who has the power in your state. Corporations, private banks, and equity firms, or the government. Are we seeing a return to more power back into the sovereign state apparatus? I don't know, but India certainly is bucking the international trend and going that direction. And by the way, China is usually in that direction too. I actually hope that more and more sovereign states around the world do not sign on to standard Western-backed patent, trademark, and copyright laws. And I'm a person that has copyrighted material. But I believe it's gotten out of control, and when you have companies and or individuals who are now trying to claim ownership over genetic code, over life, over drugs, over everything, I believe that's capitalism gone a step too far, and the only way that can be reined back in is through the power of the sovereign state. That's all for now. Tell me if you've got questions, concerns, or comments about this particular story, because it touches upon a lot of different things which might strike a raw nerve in a lot of different folks. So hit me up and tell me what you think. But for now, party on.